The following program is a production of the Barroom Network. It is intended for all audiences.
Doug Buffone.
This defense sucks. This is moronic.
John Buffone.
If your best run plays are coming off end arounds, there's a problem.
Doug was behind the microphone first. He never held back.
Very difficult to score when your offense is on the bench. When your defense is out there giving up 70, 80, 70, 64-yard drives.
Now, it's his nephew, John, and there's no holding this Buffone back either.
The biggest thing that affected Justin Fields was a coaching change, and now he has an offensive coordinator, and he actually will fit a scheme to the quarterback, something we have not seen in a long time.
I've had it. I have had it. I want somebody to get kicked in the ass.
When I see Twitter polls and national media and fans weighing in on who is going to have the number one overall pick in the 2023 draft, and I see people commenting Chicago and it's not even close, then yeah, you know what? I'm going to get a little defensive.
I got my ass whipped many times, but I tell you, I took somebody down with me.
I don't think the Bears are a 2 to 3 win team. So to answer your question, no. The Bears aren't going to be the worst team in the NFL.
It's Buffone 55, the John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at breaking down those Chicago Bears. I'm John Buffone. My co-host and producer, Alyssa Barbieri, is off this week as Tropical Storm Nicole hits Florida. Alyssa, we obviously offer our thoughts and best wishes to you and all Floridians as they deal with another serious weather event. But that means the man we've started calling the Podfather is filling in. Aldo, what a weekend and fun fans football we had in Chicago. Have you recuperated yet? Has your wife recuperated?
That's the key question there, John. By the way, kudos to you. You stay in our home and we set up the room really nice and so forth, and you left it even better than we left it for you. And my wife says to me, did he take pictures of where the pillows were and where this was and stuff? It was amazing. You're a great guest to have. We had tons of fun. We'll talk about this more later.
You can thank Mama Buffone for that one, because always leave the house or the room better than how you found it. So that was ingrained in my mind from a very young age. But let's get to the topic at hand. Although the 2-6 Detroit Lions are visiting the 3-5 Chicago Bears this Sunday, and we got a great guest joining us tonight to help us better understand a team coming off a huge upset of the Green Bay Packers. But before we get into that, Aldo, can you let the barflies in on how this show works?
That's right. This show has been scientifically and mathematically constructed to give you the absolute best football talk. And there are 3 segments, and we begin with our guest this week, and he is Kent Platte, also known as the Math Bomb on Twitter. He is extraordinary. Kent is the NFL and is in the NFL Analytics and Applications Department for PFN 365. He's also the creator of Relative Athletic Score. We'll talk more about that later in the show. If you don't know what this is, if you don't know what RAS is, you really ought to know as a football fan. And so we'll get into that a little later. That's followed by our B55 segment. That's when I ask John 5 questions about the Bears, and he responds each one within 55 seconds. That's John's way of paying tribute to the great Doug Buffone, his uncle, his mentor, and a man who played 15 seasons with the Chicago Bears in award number 55. And then we finish things up with a free-for-all that John calls Buffone's Basement, where I join John, and we have a very special guest tonight, Danny Shimon, who's going to break down 2 or 3 plays for us. And we'll have a wide-ranging discussion on all of the Chicago Bears hot topics. John, it is all yours.
Thank you, Aldo. Like you said, our guest tonight is Kent Platte from ProFootballNetwork.com and the inventor of the RAS system. Kent, friend of the show, how you doing? I appreciate you being on.
Fantastic, man. Always glad to come on and talk to you guys.
Excellent. So this is a very interesting team we're talking about. Of course, we're talking about the Detroit Lions and that scrappy team we saw on Hard Knocks. So let's just get started with some of the good news for NFC North fans, and that's it. The Packers might be the worst team in this division right now. So you saw their performance against Green Bay. What did they do right, or what happened with Green Bay?
So one of the biggest strengths that Green Bay has always had has been their offensive line and, of course, Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers looked terrible against the Lions. This is a secondary that's been one of the worst in the NFL for the entire season. And they looked like all pros out there against Aaron Rodgers. Kirby Joseph got 2 picks and a pass deflection, ended up winning defensive rookie of the week. That's no Detroit Lion player or rookie has ever won defensive rookie of the week, and he did it against Aaron Rodgers. Aiden Hutchinson had a pick against Aaron Rodgers. They just absolutely shredded him, and I would love to sit here and say that it was all great play from the Lions defenders, and there was legitimately good play in there, but it was a lot of mistakes, and this is a team that has thrived on making very few mistakes and being able to live by being efficient. And they're just doing none of that right now. It's a very sloppy, messy team, and they're making a lot of mistakes. And if you're a smart team, you can take advantage of that.
So with that being said, I want to know holistically, everyone, I love Dan Campbell. I think I associate him as like my spirit animal. If I were a head coach, that's kind of how I would be acting. But with the way that Detroit has progressed or regressed or whatever which way do you think they're going? Is he safe going into next year, or is that still something could go either way?
Detroit's in for a long haul rebuild. They've been that way from the beginning, and it seems like the team understands that. There was a little bit of worry before the Packers game that they were losing faith in Dan Campbell. I don't really think anything has indicated that. Trading TJ Hawkinson away was a really good sign that they understand that this isn't going to happen overnight. This isn't something that they can just, expect to be rushed out. The team has a lot of holes, but their best performing players right now are rookies or young players that were drafted by Brad Holmes. When you've only got 2 years in and most of your good players were drafted by that guy, that's a really good positive sign going forward. So I think the team understands that this isn't going to happen overnight, and they're expected to produce results. But they also fired Aubrey Pleasant, their defensive backs coach, before the Packers game, and he's a very well-liked, well-respected coach, and it was generally considered a poor move at the time because he's such a well-liked and well-respected coach. But it seemed to have lit a fire underneath them, and they played their best football of the season as a defense. So something's going right. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and we're hoping that it's fast, but it never is.
You brought up TJ Hawkinson. What do you think was behind that trade? Especially trading him within the division. Was it just about getting the best offer, or why do you think they were willing to move off Hawkinson? Is it all part of the rebuild?
Yeah, they're not going to re-sign Hawkinson, I think was the sign there, is that they weren't going to re-sign him, and there wasn't really any reason to try to keep him around. The season was lost already. They only had one win, and yes, there's plenty of football left to play, but I think we all understand that this team is not going to be a playoff caliber team. But they understand that they can got to get whatever you can while the price is still high. And I don't think that Hawkinson's value would really improve all that much. I posted about it right after the trade that the total value, because there was 4 picks involved, the total value of the picks was essentially a 3rd round pick for Hawkinson, which is about right for that tier 2 tight end. And, it's just getting value back when you have a player that was going to eventually leave anyway. I doubt they'll get the same production from James Mitchell, their 5th round draft pick, or Brock Wright, who was an undrafted free agent from last year, who's been one of their blockers, or Shane Zylstra, who's an undrafted free agent from this year that they were using a little bit. But 2 of those guys caught touchdowns last week. So they're not getting no value out of those guys. They just don't value the tight end position enough right now to be spending premium resources on it.
Speaking of that offense, I mean, you look at what they had been doing, so scoring 35, 36, 24, 45, but also there have been some clunkers in there as well. What's up with the peaks and valleys of this Detroit offense? Does it have to do with the quarterback, the scheme, or possibly just the schedule?
A lot of it has to do with the quarterback, with Jared Goff. Jared Goff can only really function in a perfect environment. He's one of those guys that has to have perfect protection. He has to have a strong run game, and his receivers have to be on point. They have to be exactly where he expects them to be, or he struggles. When he faced New England, you really saw that because they were able to put some pressure on him and get him uncomfortable, and he completely fell apart. After scoring 35 points a game, he scored nothing against them, and then he wouldn't score anything wouldn't score a touchdown the following week. Goff is good enough to get by if you have a team that can make things work, but he's just not good enough to run an entire offense from consistently throughout the season. They really have something going for him, though, with that run game, the offensive line, and the scheme run by Ben Johnson, who's a first-year offensive play caller, is doing really well. And you don't usually get reserve offensive linemen putting the kind of play together that the Lions reservists have been able to do. The downside right now is that they've had a lot of injuries. It's walking wounded right now, and it's very difficult to continue to run that kind of strong offense if everybody is hurt. DeAndre Swift has been injured, so they lost that dynamic player in the backfield. Amon-Ra St. Brown has been injured, so they lost their most reliable receiving threat. DJ Chark is on IR, so one of their big-name free agents they brought in to be that over-the-top guy has been out, and they still haven't seen Jameson Williams, their top draft pick from this year. So a lot of injuries, and they've managed pretty well, and actually I would consider it very well, at least to start the season, considering the amount of injuries that they've had. But this team isn't really built to dominate yet. And it's a good sign of things to come that they were able to do so convincingly in the first couple of games. But I don't think that that's sustainable, and that's what we've seen over the last few weeks.
Let's switch sides of the ball because you did talk about the defensive backs coach being let go. Was he kind of like they need some kind of change, so this guy's going to be the scapegoat? Because certainly they played pretty well against the Packers. So what is going on with the defensive backs? Was it a real coaching issue, or was this just something needs to be shook up, and this is the easiest and probably the most financially smart thing to do?
It's kind of a little bit of both. When it first happened, my first thought was that they're just scapegoating him because I don't think he's the biggest problem in that defense. Their linebacking core has not been very strong. Their pass rush, despite Aiden Hutchinson playing really well, that defensive line as a whole has just not been playing very well, and that makes everybody struggle. No defensive back is going to do well when you don't have a pass rush, right? But we saw this last week that those communication issues that they talked about when they fired Aubrey Pleasant, that showed up when the guys were able to communicate really well. They were able to understand their assignments better. What really did Aubrey Pleasant in, I think, was the amount of penalties that we're getting. And we talk about stupid penalties. Every penalty is stupid, right? But the same defensive back getting back-to-back offsides calls is the kind of boneheaded nonsense that will get you fired because there's no excuse for that, right? So I think it's a little bit of both. I think that Aubrey Pleasant was a very good coach that was probably doing a lot of good things with that defense. We saw a lot of guys like Jeff Okudah and Tracy Walker prior to his injury who improved their play with Aubrey Pleasant. But the communication issues weren't working, and they have enough problems. They needed something to get fixed, and it seems to give them a little bit of spark. Hopefully that continues to play out the rest of the season.
I want to take a step back real quick with about Jared Goff and go to a user question we have in the chat from Nano CBD. The question is Goff's contract preventing the Lions from going after new free agents, or what's the current situation with Goff's contract? Is it going to be tough to get out of that, or are they looking ahead past that?
I don't think it is now. I think it did when they first brought him in. You'll see all the contracts that the Lions picked up in the first year, and a little bit this year too, were mostly 1-year contracts or very small contracts. They didn't go out and bring in any big name free agents. And you're not just bringing in big name guys to bring in big names to try to win immediately. You're trying to build a roster, and they didn't do that in either of the last 2 years. You're talking about a quarterback that was getting paid over $30 million a year while they still have Matthew Stafford's money on the books. So they were spending an obscene amount of money at the quarterback position. So I don't think they're in that position right now, though. Now they're past a big majority of that. They're heading into his out year in 2023. They only have a $10 million cap hit if he's cut in 2023. I don't think he will be, but it gives them a lot more flexibility in 2023 and beyond to do something else at the quarterback position. They can draft a guy and they can let him sit. They can draft a guy that can start immediately and trade Jared Goff and try to find a way to recoup some of those draft picks. maybe that's how they get the pick to get Jared Goff or to get their quarterback if they're trading up. There's a lot of different scenarios that could happen next year, but I think that he's here at least through a majority of 2023 up to the trade deadline. My guess is that they're going to try to trade him and bring in somebody else. But I don't think he's part of their long-term plans. And thankfully, we're going to be out from underneath the big part of his contract next year.
I mean, that was kind of my next question of whether or not the ship has sailed on this guy potentially being the long-term solution, or was that a legit possibility after the Stafford trade where the idea was this really could be our quarterback of the future, and maybe we stole some picks and got younger at the quarterback position, or was this always going to be like, hey, play out a couple years here and then we'll use those picks to maybe get a quarterback?
So Brad Holmes drafted Jared Goff. He was with the Rams front office when they drafted Jared Goff, and he was very excited to do so. My evaluation of Jared Goff was much less rosy. Prior to his coming to the Detroit Lions, I had done a very deep dive into Jared Goff's play. Whenever I'm wrong about a player or feel like I'm wrong about a player, I always go back and watch everything that I can about the player to see what I got wrong, because you always want to get better as a talent evaluator, right? Even if it's just a hobby, you want to get better, Oh, yeah. I always learned something, but I didn't when I watched Jared Goff. He looked exactly the same. And this was through his bad seasons and the good ones that he had, like in 2018. He's always been exactly the same guy. Whenever things are going absolutely perfect, he can run an offense, he can stay in rhythm. And as long as he can stay in rhythm, he can put a pass on target 10, 15 yards downfield. He can occasionally take a deep shot, and if somebody's wide open, they're going to catch his deep shots. But he's not somebody that works well under pressure. He doesn't work well when his running game is starting to break down. He doesn't do well when he has to control his offense and take charge of things. He really struggles in those type of situations. And he just really isn't the kind of guy you build a franchise around. Fans, of course, wanted that to be the case. They wanted him to be the guy when they brought him in. He had a couple of Pro Bowls under his belt. He had that one season in 2018 that was really good. But you can't lean on a guy for his playoff experience if his playoff experience was ridiculously bad. And Jared Goff had an awful playoff performance. He just wasn't the dude. He was holding that team back. You can't build around that, but you can build other stuff while that's still there. You can build around it, but you can't build around it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. One doesn't depend on the other necessarily. Yeah. Eventually, they have to fit together, but you can build them independently. And since we're on the subject of Jared Goff, let's go to a user question from Cliff Victoria. Question: do the Lions draft a quarterback this year? Is this the year they go after it? Now, obviously, there's a lot of variables on that, where they're picking, who's available, what their scouting is on some of these guys. But do you think the temperature is getting in Detroit to the point where it's, let's go get our franchise guy this year and then start building around him?
I think it kind of has to be this year. This is the last year that they're going to have prime draft choices to be able to do that. Not necessarily just meaning where they're picking with their own pick, even though their pick is relatively high right now. But they have multiple first-round picks, multiple seconds, multiple thirds right now. If you're going to trade up to get a quarterback because your team started winning some games and you started to fall down that draft chart a little bit, this is the only year that you can move back up to get a quarterback. If you don't want to spend those premium resources, this is probably the last year that they're picking inside the top 10. When you hit that year 3, you're going to expect this defense to start picking things up. All those young guys who have been performing well will be performing, hopefully, assuming that everybody continues to develop, will be performing even better. Some of those things are going to start to gel. You're going to start getting 6, 7, 8 wins. And now you're outside of that range to draft a quarterback. They're unlikely to hit 7 or 8 wins this season. They might cap out at 6. So they're going to be either in position to draft one of the top quarterbacks or trade up for one of the top quarterbacks. And they won't be in 2023. Or 2024 rather. So it's either now or never, in my opinion.
Pretty good evaluation there. We always like to get outside opinions on Bears players because sometimes we operate within an echo chamber. And so what do you, or I would say even Detroit Lions fans, think of the progression of Justin Fields? Because the jury is out for a lot of people because they just have differing opinions on the guy. So from you being able to maybe watch a few games this year, what are your thoughts on him? And that's also that's what our user question was from Bruce Ali, Walter Jordan. Impression on Fields. What's your initial impression going into this game?
So I love Justin Fields coming out. So I was very happy to see him go to a team that I thought was going to do a lot to help him as a player. I don't think that they have done the best job in putting the right players around Justin Fields and putting him in the best position. But obviously he has talent. Obviously there are ways that you can use him that you can't use most quarterbacks. And they're starting to realize that. Use him as a runner, get him out in space, find ways to make him a threat to the defenses, because once a quarterback is considered a threat, they have to game plan for him. And once a defense starts considering game planning for an offensive player, you as an offense can now start to game plan around that and try to find ways to beat whatever you think they're going to do to counter your winners. And Justin Fields is starting to do that. He's really starting to come into his own. Are the Bears going to continue to put him in the best position to do so? It's been mixed so far, right? They've done a couple things right. They've done a couple things that weren't really that good, especially as a rookie. So hopefully he continues to progress for you guys. Hopefully he continues to progress. But I think as long as he has the right kind of guys around him, I think he can elevate the players around him using his style of play, his athleticism, his arm, and really start to get an offense that can be dangerous in the NFL.
So as we're still talking about quarterbacks, or I want to keep talking the quarterback question going, but I want to talk it from a different angle. The Bears, they've been having some real trouble on defense, specifically getting to the quarterback. Now the Lions, they started the season with one of the better offensive lines in the NFC. Has that offensive line been progressing or regressing? What can we expect on Sunday?
The individual play has not regressed at all. Every one of the guys on that offensive line that was playing good at the beginning of the year is still playing good right now. And the depth players that they've had have also been playing pretty well. The problem is that they've had to deal with injuries. The Lions starting offensive line has never played a game together. They just never have since last year. And that's hopefully not going to continue, but that's really hard to come back from. They had a guy named Evan Brown they picked up last year, and he's their top reserve interior offensive lineman. He's basically a starter, and he's played very well. They also have another offensive lineman. I'm blanking on his name. He's a converted offensive or defensive lineman from Iowa, but he's their sixth blocker, and he's injured right now. And that's a bigger problem than it would be for most teams. Most teams, your sixth tackle gets injured, or your third tackle gets injured. That's not that big of a deal. Matt Nelson. That's not that huge of a deal. But the Lions use that extra tackle to block quite a bit, way more than most teams. So they've been bringing in Dan Skipper, who's a really big player. He's one of the largest players in the NFL. He's 6'9", and he's just a massive dude. But he's not very athletic. He's not nearly as athletic as Matt Nelson. You can't really do the same types of things. You're a little bit more limited in the types of play calling that you can do. But the Lions' offensive line is still very strong, and Ben Johnson has been a very good offensive play caller for them. He's done a really good job in scheming that offensive line and using that as a strength, particularly in the run game. We've seen Jamal Williams, putting up ridiculous touchdown numbers and being a regular force, despite the fact that he was the number 2 guy coming into the season. He's not expected to be the starter, and he's still putting up solid numbers, especially when they get in the red zone. It's hard to play bully ball against the Lions when they get to the red zone.
We talk about the offensive line. Let's move over and talk about the defensive line. Who can we expect to be maybe putting some pressure on Fields? How is the pass rush for the Detroit Lions? And will there be a little more pressure on Justin Fields than he's used to? Although he's used to just enough. He's used to a lot of pressure.
This is a little bit of a risky one because the Lions, when they have been able to get pressure, they've struggled to pull the quarterbacks down. They've had some issues with tackling. The best defensive lineman they have right now is rookie Aiden Hutchinson. He's put up the most pressure out of any of their players. He's got the most sacks. He's just the best player they've had. And he pulled down a pick last year when Aaron Rodgers was, for some reason, throwing to David Bakhtiari in the end zone for reasons. But he's been a really good player for the Lions. They have a guy named Alan McNeil, their nose tackle, who's played really well for them. Michael Brockers has been a healthy scratch for several weeks. They haven't even brought him onto the playing field. He was their big veteran guy that they brought over from the Rams, and he just hasn't even been playing. But other than that, there really isn't a whole lot. The big wild card in that could be Josh Pascal, their second-round pick from this year, who did really well in his rookie debut, and then he struggled a little bit. It's kind of a wild card in that there's not a lot of tape on him. There's not a lot that people can figure out where they're going to use him and how they're going to utilize him. But I'm excited to see him play against the Bears and try to do something against Fields. The problem is that Fields is hard to bring down. That's a hard guy to catch and a hard guy to tackle. So it could go either way. I don't think it's a strength of the Lions right now. But Hutchinson's been good enough that it's worth noting that.
Let's talk skill position players because Detroit going into this year, you think they looks like they have some playmakers on there. They go and they let go of TJ Hawkinson, but kind of give us a scouting report on the wide receivers and the running backs. Are there any injuries we need to be made aware of, and who do we need to keep an eye on whenever they touch the ball?
All of them. They're all hurt. I mentioned DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is a very dynamic player. He's dangerous in both the run game and the passing game, but he's been injured for several weeks now, and he's been limited in his practice. He's limited in practice even today. So I'm not sure how much they're going to utilize him. They've got Jamal Williams, who's been pretty healthy for them, and he's more of that bully type of running back, likes to run up the middle, likes to hit people, especially when he gets to the red zone. He's going to be their biggest threat when he gets to the red zone. Skill position players have been hurt. Amon-Ra St. Brown is coming off of an injury, and I'm pretty sure he practiced this week, but he's been coming off of an injury. DJ Chark went on IR. Josh Reynolds is their most reliable player. He's injured and has been beat up a little bit. So a lot of these guys have just been kind of banged up. The big guy to watch though is going to be Khalif Raymond, which is their kick returner and was one of their primary receivers last year. He's very small. He's a little dude, but he's very dangerous when the Lions get him the ball in space because he's quick, and that size actually works to his advantage because he's difficult to catch. He's the one that I would probably be worried about. I don't think that Brock Wright or Shane Zylstra or even James Mitchell are going to be too much of a threat from the tight end position, except for the red zone. I don't think the Bears are going to blow coverage as bad as the Packers did last week against Shane Zylstra. Zylstra had the most separation of any player since like 2020 or something on his touchdown catch against the Packers. He had almost 15 yards of space between him and the nearest Packers defender. So there's not a lot going on just because of injuries right now. Jameson Williams is going to be that big dude, but he hasn't seen the field at all yet this year. He's still coming off that injury he had in his last year in college. So a lot of guys coming off of injury that could be wild cards if they're healthy enough. But it could also be a big problem for the Lions.
Ken, another similarity between the Bears and Lions is their putrid play against the run. So we have an idea why the Bears are having issues with it. What's going on with the Lions' run defense?
It's a combination of things, but it really boils down to breakdowns. The Lions have a lot of good players. They have a lot of young players that have been playing well. The problem is that never happens to the entire defense all at the same time. There's always a couple of players that are missing their assignments. I mentioned those communication issues with the defensive backfield earlier. That issue really creeps up throughout the game, especially when they start to lose things, when they start to lose their lead. The team just get a little panicky and you miss one assignment, and then the running back is off to the races. The scheme has been a bit of a struggle for the team. I don't think they have all the personnel they need to run this scheme, but the defensive line doesn't really have a whole lot in terms of run defense right now. I mentioned that Hutchinson's playing well. That includes against the run, but not a lot else is going on that defensive line against the run. The linebacking core is generally smaller than most linebacking cores. The best player in that linebacking core is a 6th-round rookie, and as good as he's playing, this is Malcolm Rodriguez out of Oklahoma State. As good as he's playing, and he is legitimately playing very well, it's problematic when that's your best linebacker. Now, that said, last week, the defense looked so much better, and they had Derek Barnes, who was their 5th-round pick from last year, 5th or 4th-round pick, mid-round pick. And he played extremely well last year, one of the best players on the team. But this year, he's been struggling. So I think it comes down to primarily the defensive line, but even if they break through the defensive line, the running backs as a whole unit have not been doing as well against the run. They actually did their best against the run when they pulled in Jeff Okudah as a linebacker a couple of weeks back. I think he had like 15 tackles, some obscene number.
Wow.
Because they just pulled him in and had him playing linebacker all game. That's not something you want to do most games. But I would suspect that they're going to do something similar to that, at least against Justin Fields, because they want somebody who's got a little bit more speed to take on him as a running threat.
Is that Malcolm Rodriguez? Is that the famous Rodrigo from the Hard Knocks series?
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's a character, man.
Yeah, he seemed like a real solid dude and loves the game of football. So, I always appreciate guys like that. I do want to go to a couple of user questions here. Let's start with Nano CBD because we're going to talk about special teams anyway. But the Lions special teams only managed 8 field goals in 8 games. Is there an issue there, or is that just kind of how it works out? Give us a rundown on the special teams.
Lions have had double-digit kickers in the last 2 years, so it is a problem. It is something that they need to work on. But part of it, too, is that their Lions are one of the most aggressive coaching staffs in the NFL. Dan Campbell doesn't like to punt, and he doesn't like to kick a field goal if he's only got a yard or two to go. They like to go for it on 4th down, and they like to do fakes. They've done more fakes, I think, than anybody in the NFL over the last 2 years. If not, it's probably close because that's got to be only like 7 plays a season or something. I doubt that happens often. But they like doing some more creative things on 3rd down or on 4th down rather than most teams. They're more likely to go for it. They're more likely to try some trickery to pull it out. So it isn't just that the kicking game has struggled, but it's also that the kicking game has struggled.
Let's go to another listener question. We talked about this earlier, but I kind of want your personal opinion on it. This one's from J2K. It says, Matthew, we know that they're talking moving on from Dan Campbell, but you said this is all part of the rebuild. So if you had to guess, or let's just say, would you want Dan Campbell to come back as a Lions fan?
It would be surprising to me if they moved on from him. This team has taken a number of different approaches when it comes to trying to fix the Lions. I mean, the Lions have been broken for 57 years. So there's a number of approaches that they tried to do it. When they picked up Martin Mayhew, who was a carryover from the previous GM, that was probably a bad choice. And they brought in a players coach who was expected to come in and try to help everybody and try to bring everybody up. And they got to the playoffs for the first time in quite a long time. But they weren't able to sustain it, and the discipline problems became much bigger than they had anticipated, so they moved on. They hired Jim Caldwell, who was a players coach, and they were expecting things to get better immediately. They did very quickly, but then they fell apart just as quickly because you can't sustain the type of play that he was trying to put together long term. So it was a bad idea to try to just carry on what they had going on. So they picked up Matt Patricia, who wanted to rebuild everything in this Patriots way, and that failed miserably. It didn't work in any measure. And the team ended up worse off than when they had brought in Matt Patricia, which brings us to Dan Campbell. He's coming into a worse position than any of the previous GMs other than the first one when Martin Mayhew first took up. But he doesn't have that crutch of being a carryover from the worst general manager in football history. So he doesn't have that hanging over his head. He comes from a winning organization. He's got a reputation of being able to find talent in any round, and he's done that over the last 2 years. You know, I've mentioned the contributors that they have. Malcolm Rodriguez was a 6th-round pick. Kirby Joseph got 2 picks last week. He was a 3rd-round pick. Aside from their 2nd-round picks, which haven't been very good, they've done a very good job of identifying talent and getting good players on the football field. They just need time. The only time there was any worry was that they started off much slower than expected this season. But I think that they've communicated the whole follow the plan type of thing to the front office, and they've been working with them the entire time. I don't think Dan Campbell's in any danger of losing his job until probably 2025, maybe next year if there's something that goes very badly.
Which it always can. It's the NFL, and it's the Lions, and we've trust me, as a Bears fan, we've seen things fall apart very quickly whenever we were enthusiastic as well. So it goes with the territory. Going into this game, I don't even know what the spread is on this game, but what are your thoughts on the prediction of this game? Do the Lions keep the momentum going off Green Bay and go into Soldier Field and steal a win, or how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, the Lions are coming in galvanized for the first time pretty much all season. They're coming in with an energy that they haven't had. I don't know how they're going to perform with as many injuries as they have. There's so many injuries on this team right now. It's really tough coming into this week. So it's really tough to predict how they're going to show. One thing that I can say is that even when they've been dealing with injuries, they've never stopped giving teams trouble. They've never stopped being a problem. They're always a team that you have to pay attention to, and you have to keep your foot on the gas. I think this is a really good matchup for Chicago. I think that Justin Fields being a mobile quarterback and the issues the Lions have had dealing with those types of players plays heavily in Chicago's favor. But I think they're going to be energized, and that was a big issue last week. Where the team was just ready to go, and the Packers were much more dejected, and they were able to take advantage of that, and they were able to build on that. So we always talk about momentum and how much that plays into teams. I think if the Lions start to build momentum early in the game, they're going to play on that for the rest of the game, and it could be a really big problem. If they're struggling a bit in the first half, the Bears should have a pretty easy time of putting the Lions to bed. It'll probably be a close one. It's been a close one in every game this year, other than the couple blowouts they had when they fell apart. But in any game that they've been even a little bit competitive, it's been a lot competitive. If you know what I mean. They're either getting absolutely curb stomped, or they're a really big problem. There's nothing in between there.
Well, that should make for an exciting game then. I'm getting more and more excited as the days go by. Hey, Ken, before we get you out of here, you, of course, are the genius behind the creation of RAS Analytics, and I know you've explained what it is about a million times, or at least probably 1.5 million. But let me try to wrap my head around this, because I'm not the best analytics person. So RAS, or RAS, stands for Relative Athletic Score, and how you get it is that the score for every NFL player is by measuring the athletic testing on speed and agility, and then you kind of factor that in with height, weight, and strength. Am I in the ballpark, or what are we doing?
Yeah, every player's metric is compared against every other player at that position from 1987 to the player's draft year. So we've got thousands of players in some positions. I know wide receivers were up to like 2,500 right now. So the score that you see is from 0 to 10, and it's literally just that. If you look at their score and you're like, well, he ran a 4.52. What's that on a scale of 0 to 10? Well, it's a 6.15. You've got a good idea of where that falls in your head. You know that he's faster than the average player at his position, but he's not so fast that you're like, oh yeah, he's a burner. You know, it gives you a much better idea of where that number compares than just the raw number itself. All of these numbers are factored together, including size, and it is bigger is better in this instance. So technically, if you had a 400-pound cornerback, he's going to have a 10 in weight. That's going to be a good score in weight, even though that is very clearly not a good score in weight. But that's because the height and weight are meant to weight the rest of the scores. And I felt that it's done a pretty good job of that over the years. And the number of times that I've looked at it, I feel like it's done a good job of weighting for the other scores. But the idea is, at the end of it all, you get one score that, again, factors against every other player at that position for the last 30-something years. And it gives you that 0 to 10 to just overall ballpark. Where is he athletically on a scale of 0 to 10? He's a 9.6 or whatever he is. It gives you a good idea where they are.
That makes me curious, and you probably don't know it offhand, but I don't know if you've ran this on Justin Fields this year, because I feel like a lot of Bears fans would like to know where he ranks when it comes to other quarterbacks. Any idea where Fields might rank on the RAS system?
Yeah, he didn't finish testing, but he was headed for a very good score. Fields ran the 40-yard dash, and he had a 99.8th percentile 40-yard dash. He ran a 4.46. So he was headed for a really good score. He just didn't complete his testing, and there's a minimum. So he didn't complete his testing. He didn't get a score, but it was probably going to be very good.
Well, that's what we like to hear. Keep throwing those good compliments coming out to Justin Fields. But Kent, before we cut you loose, please tell our listeners and viewers where they can find your website, catch your work, because this whole system and this analytical thing you got going on here, it's way above my intellect, but I want to learn more about it, and I'm sure a lot of other people do too. So how can they interact with you and also learn more about the RAS analytics system?
Yeah, I'm always available on Twitter at MathBomb, and you can find me on most of the time. I'm always at least paying attention to my Twitter feed. I love engaging with fans. I love getting questions about this stuff. Don't worry about asking something you feel might be insulting. I've been doing this for a long time. It's where all this white comes from. These are all your questions over the years. But you can find me on there. You can also go to the website at ras.football, and you can search for any player over the last 37 years. Or again, I forget how many it is. I think it's 35 years, something like that. Since 1987. So long time.
35.
Yeah. So you got all those players you can look at and get an idea of their scores. You can compare them. We have a compare tool on the site. You can change the scores and see what it would look like. Like if you're wondering, well, what if Justin Fields was 6'5" instead of just nearly 6'3"? What would his score be? You can do that. We have a calculator on there to do that for every single card. And if you want to just make it look pretty, I've been working on overlays for everything, so you can pull it up on a Chicago Bears card. You can pull Justin Fields up on an Ohio State card if you want to now. You can, well, it's not done yet. I'm going to have one for Pro Bowls as well. I have a Hall of Fame one. You can pull up if you're really interested in making it look pretty.
Yeah.
But I'm working on doing this for not just the NFL, but the CFL, the XFL that just started is kicking back up. So trying to make everything look nice as well as be functional. So you can always check it out there. Outside of that, you can check out my work at Pro Football Network at the mock draft simulator, the profootballnetwork.com/mock draft. You can go and run as many sims as you want and be your own GM, pick as many Bears players as you want. 31st overall, since there's no 32nd this year. Oh, well, no, first round 32nd. Mm-hmm. Miami got in trouble. But
it's neither here nor there.
but you can go test that out and figure out the types of players that you'd want to pick up, or you can just pretend you're the Lions and get them all the bad players and see how you would build their team.
It's the best of both worlds. But listen, Ken Platte, you always raise the team GPA when you're on to this show, so we really appreciate that, and can't wait to talk to you down the road. We appreciate you being on.
I love being on. You guys can invite me anytime.
Appreciate it. And we'll be back with more Buffone 55 right after this.
Sundays at the Bar Room. We start off with Mike North and Aldo Gandia on the early Bears special. And then it's 5 Bears fanatics on the Barfly Tailgate Show. That's followed by fantasy football advice from 2 fantasy football experts. And at halftime and after every Bears game, it's Bear football. Subscribe to the Barroom Network now. Hey everyone, it's Aldo Gandia. I'm filling in for Alyssa Barbieri, and we again wish her all the best down in Florida as they're hitting another severe weather event. I'm glad to see Cliff Victoria in the chat room, so hopefully this hurricane is not affecting him as it did already, the previous one. So, and now we're ready for our B55 segment. That's where I ask John 5 Bears-related questions, and then he has 55 seconds to respond to each question. And that, of course, is in honor of his mentor, his uncle, Doug Buffone, who played 15 seasons for the Chicago Bears. And by the way, Doug was also one of my heroes growing up as he played alongside the great Dick Butkus and helped Dick Butkus roam around and make great plays. John, how are you, my friend?
Oh, man, I love having those kinds of guests on because it's just so enlightening to me, and it lets me know like what the human brain is capable of. Like when it was for me, it was all like, how much can you bench press? That's where my analytic goes. 45s and 45s, that's 90, and then you throw the 30. That's where my math and analytics come from. So it's great to see stuff like that because it's just so in depth and it gives such a different way of grading things.
Mm-hmm. Got to tell you a quick story. When I started this whole thing, it was under the banner NFC North Bar Room. And so we had a bar room for each of the 4 NFC North teams. And Kent was the lead writer at the Lions Bar Room. And so I was introduced to him by BJ Rydell, who headed the Vikings barroom. So when I got to meet Kent and learned about RAS and then learned about the process of him manually putting in all of these numbers into some Excel sheet and doing all that studying and doing all that work, I said, holy cow, dude, this is unbelievable. And now I read national publications, I watch ESPN, and they're referring to Raz, and that's 2014 when I first met Kent. And so it's unbelievable, the fame and acclaim that he has gotten for all of his hard work. Very well deserved.
Absolutely incredible. So I'm glad that he was able to take some time to talk to us.
Hey, I know in the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about our event from Saturday, but I do want to share with all of the Barflies one thing that happened at King's Entertainment that I think people will find interesting because it hurt a little bit.
What happened, John?
It turns out I'm not a very good athlete, and I probably should just hang it up right now because this is embarrassing. And I'm embarrassed for myself, I'm embarrassed for my family, and
the bar room.
Especially the bar room. And so I'd like to announce my retirement from the game of bowling. And thanks for all my supporters out there who've been with me throughout this journey for the last 15, 20 minutes. But it's going to be it. Thanks, everybody.
Please tell me it's not so. Please tell me you're not retiring.
That was the first time I had bowled in like 15 years. And then I got a camera on me, putting all the pressure on me. I mean, I'll be honest though. When I hit a strike in the 10th frame, and man, that boost, I think it was like I bowled a 111. And that was my high score for the day. So yeah, straight nines the whole way through, and then struck out in the 10th. So all that to say, that was a hell of a time, man. I had such a good time talking to all the guys in the bar room. Mike North heckling me while I'm throwing the ball, so I wouldn't expect anything less. So, that was
really cool. All right, let's get to our B55 segment. The first question is, John, you know, you and I have been working together now on this show for 6 years, and I have never ever seen you applaud a moral victory. I'm more on that side, you know, but you never. And so saw you at this after the game of the Bears loss to the Dolphins, the 35-32 loss this Sunday. And you did not, though, seem very distraught by what happened. So I got to find out from you, and you got 55 seconds to do this. I got to find out from you, how are you feeling about the Chicago Bears loss? So let me put 55 up on the clock, and you can take it away.
Look, I hated that the Bears lost. I think they got hosed on that non-pass interference call, and there were a few other penalties that didn't go their way. But, man, what a fun game to watch. I've been saying that I'd rather them lose like that than lose 12-7, because what needs to progress for the long-term success of the Chicago Bears keeps progressing. Now, we're going to get to Justin Fields here in a little bit, but we saw Cole Kmet catch 2 touchdown passes. We saw Darnell Mooney get involved. We saw Chase Claypool for the first time in a Bears uniform. And even though he didn't really have a huge impact on the game, we kind of saw how they want to use him moving forward. Yeah, I've been over moral victories for a while, but if you're a Bears fan, it's hard to come out of that game and not feel enthused. There is a different energy around this team. There's a strong confidence in the coaching staff, the quarterback, and the overall direction of the franchise. When's the last time any of us could say that?
You are so right about that. There, you know, John, I think we, years from now, we'll look back and talk about this game, because this was kind of a milestone game. It was a flag, you know, in the sand saying we are really getting this together. And it seems like, as you just said, the players are all buying into what the coaching staff is doing, what the general manager is doing. It's been unsettling, of course, when you trade Khalil Mack and Roquan Smith. Members of the defense were upset, but they're seeing something special here. They get it. This is not, you know, these guys aren't stupid. They understand what Ryan Poles is doing. And so I think all of these players want to be a part of that. And so hopefully that'll make them play harder in the upcoming games.
It's not just like they're a bad team and there's like hopelessness. You just see that there's something there. And of course, as fans, we want to believe that. So we see something and we run with it. But I legitimately see something. I legitimately feel like they're going to be turning a corner soon. And that's exciting to me because I think in the last few years, we thought maybe they were descending rather than ascending. And so it's nice to maybe feel like it's going the other direction.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Let us get to question number 2 on our B55 segment. One thing that the Bears fans are clearly super excited about is the play of quarterback Justin Fields. The second-year quarterback put in another memorable performance, throwing for 3 touchdowns and breaking the single-season rushing record for a quarterback with 178 yards, including a 61-yard run for a touchdown. John, fans were already feeling good about Fields heading into this game. So I want to know from you, what do you think this performance does for his progression? 55 seconds are on the clock.
So, Aldo, you and I were talking about this game after we left Soldier Field, and I was like, this is weird. I feel like the Chicago Bears have a potential superstar quarterback. And I said that very cautiously, by the way. But when the Dolphins head coach and a number of the Miami Dolphins players are talking about how Justin Fields is a star in the making and he's one of the most dynamic players in the NFL, it reinforces our internal conversations as fans that Justin Fields is that dude. Look, I'm not overly concerned about Justin Fields running too much. That's just one more thing that defenses have to fear. And if they get hung up on the running, then that's going to open up more throwing opportunities. As far as the hits go, I've said on multiple occasions, I think running the ball and taking hits doesn't mess him up nearly as much as getting smoked in the pocket when he doesn't see it coming. We are seeing a Bears offense score points. We are seeing a Bears offense that is currently much more efficient than some of the other teams in the division. So we can be excited about this.
Indeed. One of the things that this whole Justin Fields story narrative should be proving and illustrating to fans and especially the national media who are kind of written off Justin Fields is that patience and context and so many other things need to be considered before you make an evaluation of somebody. And sometimes, particularly, and I know I'm sort of switching subjects here, but the national media, they're paid to come up with, hot topics and statements that are going to get you clicks and so forth. But you know what? It's better if you say, be patient. Let's wait on what we can see this guy do and not do. Let's wait for the offense to really get their system in place and for the players to learn it and so forth. If that would have happened, a lot of the naysayers of Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears who were saying it was going to be the worst offense and the big team was going to be vying for the first round draft pick, the first pick of the first round, they would have really saved face with this, wouldn't they?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And listen, I'm not going to ever claim that I'm a very patient person because there are plenty times where I just emotionally react to something. And then upon thinking about what I said, like, was that a prisoner of the moment statement I just made? And a lot of the times, yes, it is. But yes, you're absolutely right. Patience is going to pay off in this case. I truly believe that. Whenever we were talking the first few weeks where they weren't letting them throw and, everything kind of looked discombobulated, I really just think that was a gauging process for not just the quarterback, but for the offensive coordinator to see what he had and what was working and what wasn't. And then we saw a game plan progressing and a scheme progressing and a philosophy progressing in front of our eyes. And now we're seeing the fruits of that labor.
All right. Question number 3. And there's only one way to introduce this question. It is from your uncle.
This defense sucks.
Yes, they do.
Oh, God. I was hoping you'd have that ready to go.
One thing Bears fans are not excited about is this defense because they do suck. Normally, if a Bears team scores 32 points, it would be easy to assume that they won. However, this team has given up 84 points in the past. I can't even count up to 84. Given up 84 points in the last 2 games. How concerned are you, John Buffone, about this defense? You got 55 seconds.
Well, it's just great to hear that soundbite, by the way. But it's going to be quite concerning for the rest of the season. No Roquan Smith, no Robert Quinn. We knew it was going to be difficult, but it's a little concerning that Alan Williams isn't making any adjustments or taking any chances. He's sticking with that pretty vanilla cover two. And this was a complaint last week, and I gave him the benefit of the doubt that maybe he didn't think he had the talent to do anything different. But I'm coming around on the idea that you have to change something. You can't keep doing what you're doing right now. I know you don't like the blitz, but you're getting no push and your opponents are carving you up. So why not send the house and see if you can get a sack or a fumble or force a throw or something? I know that's not the most technical answer in the world, but what's the worst that can happen? They score 35, they score 49. Oh, wait, that already happened. So I hope we see some kind of new wrinkle against the Lions because we know that they have the capability of scoring some points.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this week's Buffone's Basement because Danny Shimon is going to join us. And while I was at the game at halftime, I think I texted Danny and said, "What is going on with this defense?" And he was telling me no pressure. Yeah, and I'm surprised Alan Williams isn't dialing things up. You know, if you're going to get burned on every play, at least get burned, blitzing the quarterback and putting pressure on him. And so I totally agree with them. I hopefully expect that Alan Williams is going to come up with something. Now, it's always about the players, right? It's first and foremost, they have to execute whatever is being called, but it sure would help if what is being called would help the players a little roundabout.
I know it's not a system based on pressure, but you just can't sit back and watch everyone just pick you apart either. So something needs to change there.
Indeed. All right. So here we go to question number 4. Since the Bears play the Lions this Sunday, it is time to turn our attention to the NFC North. Though it seems like the Vikings are going to easily run away with the division in 2022, but as far as the future of the division goes, it looks like it could be up for grabs as early as next year. Next year, John, what is your assessment of the NFC North for 2023 and beyond? The 55 seconds starts now.
Well, what we're seeing is basically 4 teams going in 4 wildly different directions. The Lions were a scrappy team that everyone fell in love with on Hard Knocks, but I'm not totally convinced Dan Campbell will be there next year. And if they have a top 5 pick, they may be inclined to draft the quarterback. And do you want your rookie quarterback paired with a lame duck head coach? I say no. So maybe the Detroit rebuild goes back to square one. Then Minnesota is clearly going to win the division this year. They have great weapons on offense, but with Kirk Cousins, it just never feels like they're going to be in that elite Super Bowl favorite conversation. Don't get me wrong. They're a hell of a team, but it just feels like they are maintaining rather than ascending. And we know that Green Bay is kind of rudderless right now. Here's a team that was supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, but their $50 million quarterback can't find his groove. Their receiving core is inexperienced, and that highly touted defense has been a disappointment. Then you have the Bears with a budding quarterback, solid coaching, strong draft capital, and enough cap space to buy a small country. So yeah, things could change pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly. You know what's amazing is that on paper, to me, it looks like the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers, and of course the Minnesota Vikings, have more talent than the Chicago Bears. But right now, the Chicago Bears are playing at better than the Green Bay Packers, better than the Detroit Lions, and probably close to where the Vikings are. So this is so promising. I mean, it is a big applause and check mark and plus and A plus for the coaching staff. You know, from the very beginning at preseason, we saw something different when this team won 3 preseason games. We saw a team that was a collection of players from all across the league with 1-year contracts playing disciplined football and really buying into this whole corny hits philosophy. And so this team could be the best coached team in the NFC North and possibly the NFC. So it's a good sign, isn't it?
Oh, you're getting me excited, Aldo. Don't say it. Don't. No. All right. Okay. All right. We can keep going that way. I like it. And it's I'll be honest. It hasn't the last 3 years. It always hasn't been exciting to be a Bears fan. And now there's stuff to look forward to. And that's what's sticking with me right now. That's why I'm not such a curmudgeon right now, because there's actually things to be hopeful for.
We'll always miss the curmudgeon side, but we'd happily trade it for a Super Bowl victory.
Any day of the week.
Indeed. All right. Let's turn off the clock for this last one. This is a football related question, but it's also not football related, John. So you drove a total of 13 hours from Pennsylvania, your home state, to come to Chicago this weekend, and you fit in as about as much activity as possible in 3 days. So I want to know, how would you grade your trip to Chicago? And again, the clock is off. It's all yours, brother.
Wow. What a weekend. It was just incredible. I was able to visit some family in Chicago. I went to a Smashing Pumpkins concert, which was incredible. I went to the Bears game in beautiful Chicago weather in November in an awesome atmosphere, and got to see history be made with Justin Fields breaking the single game rushing record for a quarterback. And of course, the Barroom Network event was absolutely amazing. Being able to interact with all of you face-to-face, seeing some folks that have listened to this show since its inception, hanging out with other Barroom hosts whom I've never met in person. It was just awesome. I was able to cross so much off of my bucket list, and I have to thank Aldo and especially his wife for welcoming me into their home, conducting their house like a bed and breakfast, and just being the foundation of this awesome community of Bears fans that continues to grow. And I'm just so proud and grateful, and I can't wait to do it again. Look, there's a lot of toxic things that come from the internet and social media, but this is one of the great things that can come of it. So thank you, Barflies. Thank you, Aldo. And thank you, Chicago. I'll be back soon, and we'll be back right after this.
You got to be accountable to yourself. You got to be fair to yourself and say, hey, you know, I screwed up here, and this is where I got to get better. You know, like EQ has that drop on that play. He should never have dropped that ball. Okay, but he did. Okay, then you can get into the two interference calls on the Bears, which I thought were atrocious, and then the non-call on Claypool, which was even worse. I mean, he was literally getting looked like they were doing a Heimlich maneuver with him or something, you know?
Exactly, or something X-rated.
Yeah, you know, so yeah, I like that X-rated one. They didn't call it, you know, so, but there's nothing you can do about it. I tweeted out during the game, yeah, you're going to get a letter from the league on Wednesday saying, yeah, we made a mistake. That should have been a call. Big fucking deal.
Welcome back to Buffone 55. Like Aldo said earlier, with Alyssa unavailable for Buffone's Basement, Aldo, you suggested we bring in Danny Shimon, and I think that's a hell of an idea to talk about some of the latest hot topics around the Chicago Bears. So let's get him in here. Danny, come on in. Welcome to Buffone's Basement and Buffone 55. How you doing, brother?
Man, this is a nice basement. Holy cow! I know you have a palatial estate, but this basement is like fancy.
Just check is in the mail, Danny. We appreciate you.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, not much. We're just talking some Bears, and I love having you on shows because you're able to give that more detailed, analytical mind to some of the things going on around the Chicago Bears. Although I know you got some plays queued up, and I kind of just want to jump right into them. I believe the first one was the touchdown pass to Mooney, and Danny, I know you were watching the game in detail, so can you take us through what Justin Fields was doing, maybe what he was seeing, and maybe doing some things that he wouldn't have done earlier in the season? Aldo, you got that queued up? Or am I?
Yeah, and before if we just pull up the still shot there, Aldo, before we run it, I just wanted to say here. So basically, John, what I will look here, and this is what Fields is getting knocked on, right? Everyone says, oh, Fields can make plays in the pocket. He's just a running quarterback. Well, here I give you Exhibit A. First of all, I like to see what's he looking at pre-snap, right? Looks like the Dolphins have 6 guys at the line of scrimmage here. All right, and it looks like they're playing a single high safety. The guy's kind of shading over towards the boundary in terms of the safety. You know, if they bring 6 guys, he's going to have to get rid of the ball quickly. Or if they drop back guys, what's that safety doing? You know, are they trying to disguise anything? So this is what you're going to look for here. Primary guy we have circled there is Darnell Mooney. If we go on and run it here, Aldo, The Dolphins drop back 2 guys and keep 1 guy in the spy. So right now, and now you see the safety kind of shifting in the middle of the football field between the hash marks. Now he knows, Fields knows that he's got Mooney because of his route. The only thing now, he's got to execute the throw. And this is where I'm talking about in terms of ball placement, accuracy, and putting it in a spot where only his receiver can get to it. So he knows, look, right, the ball's already out of his hands. Mooney hasn't even got to the end zone yet, and he puts it to a spot where only Darnell Mooney can make a play on the football. Even if Xavier Howard turns his head around and looks at that ball, he cannot make a play at the ball. So this is where you throw it to a spot where either your receiver comes down with it for a touchdown or it's an incomplete pass. And by the way, Bradley Chubb is bearing down on him on his left side there too. So in the pocket, stands tall, takes the hit, shows the toughness that we all know he has, and puts the ball in terms of placement, accuracy, and timing right to a perfect spot. This is Exhibit A in terms of Justin Fields making plays from the pocket. Now, this is where I've seen him do this kind of stuff at Ohio State. That's why I was so excited about him coming out. Now, is he doing this on a consistent basis? No. We have another play where I can show you some different things where he could get a little bit better at. But with more reps, with more continued growth and development in the pocket, this kid can make these plays. It's just a matter of getting him that experience and just letting him, and now watching him do it on a more consistent basis. But here I give you Exhibit A for all those people who are telling me that Justin Fields cannot make plays from the pocket. Bam, perfect throw right here.
You know what I love about this, excuse me, John, is it's just not Chubb's. The entire pocket is closing in on him, and he would normally shift his shoulders, left shoulder towards the goal line, and then take off. No, he stood in here and made a professional throw, and as Danny said, right on the dime. Sorry, John.
No problem. Danny, I was wondering because a knock, or at least the narrative that people were building around Fields early in the season was he just can't pull the trigger. He holds onto the ball too long. He doesn't get rid of the ball. But it seems like that certainly wasn't the case on that play. Like he took a key, he saw something, and he made a decision. Is that something that has progressed through the season?
On this play, yes. And on another play, I'll show you where there is a point where you say, all right, he had to pull the trigger quickly there, but he didn't do it. However, what's happening here, John, is it's the repetition. He's seeing this more and more now. He's getting more comfortable in terms of, being able to stand back there in the pocket. Now, if this was week 2 or 3 or 4, he probably would have just tucked the ball and tried to run and probably would have taken a sack, or probably just, something bad would have happened, right? But he knew what was happening. He diagnosed pre-snap what's going to happen. That the key for a quarterback is in this kind of a pre-snap read. What does the safety do? With the safety shifting towards the middle of the football field, he now knows man-to-man coverage, that he knows where Mooney's going. All he has to do is get the ball to that spot. And again, the placement and the accuracy was just spot on. These are things that we're going to see him as he gets more and more comfortable doing on a more consistent basis, is what I believe.
So the next play I want to talk about is the one that just set Soldier Field on fire. And obviously it was a big contribution to Justin Fields breaking the single game rushing record for a quarterback. That would have been the 61-yard run that he had here. So in your analytical mind of breaking down tape, what goes through Justin Fields' mind here? And then what does he see to ultimately have one of the biggest plays of the game?
Well, this is the play that it's on every single national media highlight, and they're just blowing it up every weekend or day in and day out. You see it over and over again. But this is I'm going to show you here a piece where once Justin Fields is fully developed in terms of being a pocket quarterback, this play never should have happened, to be honest with you, right? The end result was great. We loved what he did, but there was a much easier throw and play he could have done earlier on in this process. And the one thing that he's got to get used to, and we talked about him holding on to the football, this offense is such a timing-based rhythm offense that once his third step back or third drop back step, once that back foot hits the ground, that ball's got to come out. And if we go ahead and run it here, we've highlighted Darnell Mooney because, again, that's his primary target here. Take a look at it. Once he gets the ball, 1, 2, 3, bam, right there. Stop it. If you could stop it right there, although it'd be awesome if we can go back right there. 1, 2, 3, bam. One more, a little bit right there. Now, right there, that ball, if you see Mooney's clearing that second level defender coming over into the middle wide open, there is no safety that's going to come down and take off his head. There is no safety that's going to come down and make a play on the football. Right there, Justin Fields gets rid of that football to Darnell Mooney. Yeah, it's not a 61-yard touchdown run, but it's a first down and keeps the chains moving, and that's his primary read. That's where he should have just got rid of the football. So what he does now is he tries to step up in the pocket, which, he has a good pocket there. good formation. Could have just taken a couple of shuffle steps up, elevated himself in the pocket, and still made that throw. But what happened was he kind of ducked his pads, ducked his shoulders. Now he's kind of running away from coverage. Now he's trying to throw the ball as he's jumping up in the air, sees Mooney turn his back, and just the athletic prowess and his ability just be able to leave his feet, come back down, recoil the football back inside of his body, and now he runs away from 7 or 8, Miami defenders. That's the athletic ability that, that gives you that kind of play. But honestly, this play should never happen. He should just throw that football, made that first read. He had to read. He was looking at Mooney right away. And this is what we talked about early on in the season was he stares down this primary receiver. He sees it happening, but he doesn't just pull the trigger. And here, again, the result is great, but this play should not have happened.
This is why I'm so happy that we have Danny on the show, because while he's looking at all these reads and seeing what's going on, I'm pounding my chest and screaming at the sky. So I don't have time to look at who's actually open. So I didn't even notice that. I honest to God didn't even look at that. But it's so interesting to see how those things actually developed as the wide receivers are going. And like you said, as he gets more comfortable back there, those are the reads he's going to make, right?
Right. And this is where he takes less pounding because what if he didn't get a run for 61 yards? What if he takes, 12, 10-yard run and a guy comes and takes a cheap shot at him? So now he's got to open himself up to injuries and all that stuff. So this is where, again, the end result, great. I'm not trying to say now. I was screaming and hollering here in my living room as well when I saw that. But once you open up the all 22, you kind of take a look and see, all right, what were the options? What was he looking at? The fact that he stares down the receiver, sees it come open, got a clean pocket, rip it, take that easy first down and move on to the next play. And that's what he's going to have to continue to get better at in terms of, his pocket presence, his ability to make plays from the pocket. And it's going to happen. I'm not trying to knock him or anything. It takes some time and he's getting better. We've seen Alden and I have broken down tapes from weeks 1 through 4, and we've seen a marked improvement in terms of, we just saw that in the previous clip, right? The play from the pocket, the anticipation, the ball placement. It's going to happen. It's just, there's times where you still see him kind of just like holding on to the football because he's a great athlete, because he knows he can get away from these guys. He tends to hold on and just looks for a bigger opportunity. Or if he doesn't feel right, he just doesn't let go of the football so far. But once he gets over that, once he starts making these throws on a routine and on a more consistent basis, sky's the limit.
This is why he's such an extraordinary player, because there could be a mistake by the receiver on the route, or there could be a mistake of his own making where he doesn't spot the open receiver and so forth, but he can still make tremendous plays because of his athleticism. And this is, I'm reminded a little bit of Jay Cutler. Jay Cutler was a competitor who would always try to force things because he wanted to win so badly and he wanted to excel and be great, but he made terrible decisions. Fields now is making some not terrible decisions, but he's making some decisions that aren't within the schematics of what Luke Getsy wants him to perform, but he's still kind of getting away with them because of that tremendous athleticism and helping the Bears offense be the hottest offense in the NFL.
The difference between Cutler and Fields, Cutler would try to force the ball. So he'd put the ball in harm's way. Fields is not doing that. Fields is just putting his body in harm's way because he's going to go ahead and tuck the ball and run with the football. So that's the difference there between those two.
All right.
We got one more play I want you to look over, Danny. I believe it was the Equanimeous St. Brown drop here. Right. So can you take us through pre-snap all the way to the conclusion?
Yeah, so obviously 4th and 10, final play of this, what's trying to be the final play of the series or of the game. And again, they're looking like they're going to bring some pressure here. They're lining up in a more of a disguise, got a single safety up top there. And what Justin knows, the one thing I want to point out on this play, and the reason I picked this play is just 4th and 10, the calmness, the demeanor that he's not rushing. He's not, it's just like he's if you're going to run this play, it's just like it's a regular, play at the park, a turkey bowl, we're all getting together here for Thanksgiving, making this play, feels pressure coming in from both sides, both right and left, escapes the pocket, just casually runs to it right, full speed, and just throws an accurate ball, leading the receiver away from the defender, hits him perfectly in his hands. Unfortunately, EQ drops the football. But just the fact that he's just so calm in the pocket, he's not dancing and wiggling and all that stuff and getting all hyped up and just, losing himself. That's what I wanted to show. Now, if we have a chance to go back and start off from the beginning there, Aldo, if you can do that, I do want to nitpick a little bit. So if we go back and run it, and if we can stop it at the top of his drop, 1, 2, 3, bam, right there, stop it. All right, so you see the safety again. He's trailing more toward the middle of the football field. He's in between the hash marks. That is Claypool up there one-on-one with that corner who's now turned himself around. So Claypool's got that inside leverage here. All you got to do is let it rip to Claypool, and you got a nice big completion. So you don't have to go to necessarily to St. Brown. But the thing is, I gave him a little slack here because that is Claypool's first game. They haven't had much practice reps. This is more of a timing and rhythm throw. He's got to know where Claypool's going to break that route off. And he's got to know where to place the football. So, but if this, this is like, say, week 12 or whatever, and Claypool's had some time with Justin, I expect him to, at that top of his drop there, plant that foot. And because Claypool has the inside leverage, no safety in the middle of the football field, corners turning his back around, is turning all the way around, looking toward the sidelines. This is where he throws that ball to Claypool. Nice big completion. But again, doesn't go there, goes more the route where he escapes pressure, but still maintains his calmness and throws a nice ball on the run, just kind of flicks it perfect, leads the receiver away from the defender. Unfortunately, EQ drops the ball.
And it should have been caught. I mean, that should have been moving the change, and they should have had another opportunity to win that ball game. And if you're in that situation, St. Brown is technically your number 3 right now, I guess, depending on how you want to see the depth chart. But that's a catch you got to make. That's a catch you got to go. If you want to win the game, those are catches you got to make. So it's unfortunate. Fields did what he had to do to keep the chains moving, and it just didn't work out. But I do want to stay on that topic of Justin Fields and his progression, because Danny, you've been looking at film of this guy all year. And so, and a lot of national analysts have not. And so when I hear someone say, well, he runs really well, but he still hasn't proven that he can throw the ball, which I believe I heard today on a national show, and that, yeah, he's running, but he's a great athlete, but he's still not showing that he can be a quarterback. What do you say to that notion?
Those are people who are not watching an entire football game. They're watching the stats, right? They see Justin Fields ran for 178 yards, set a record for a quarterback rushing, but he only threw for 123 yards, averaging 4.4 yards a completion. So that's what they're doing. But if you watch this kid, and we just, we've been watching him throughout the year, you see the way now he's progressing, right? We just showed you a couple of plays from the pocket there. We see the way now, yeah, he's using his legs now because he's becoming an extra weapon there out on the football field. And now it's allowing other guys to come open and for Getsy to be able to scheme other guys open. But once this offense is completely built around him in terms of receivers, in terms of offensive line, once he gets more comfortable in terms of pocket, this kid has no problem throwing a football. We just showed you right there on the run to his right, 4th and 10, ball game, critical situation, flicks a beautiful ball, leading the receiver away from his defender, accurate throw. And we just showed you the earlier play with Darnell Mooney making a nice, ball placement throw and all that anticipation, everything like that. So the kid can make throws. He can make these plays. These national guys who are doing these hits at Fields, they don't watch him every snap in and snap out. They just look at the stats and say, oh, he ran for 178 yards and only threw for 123. This guy can't throw the football. This guy's only a running quarterback. He's not a running quarterback. He is a multi-dimensional threat in the backfield. He's a football player. I mean, some quarterbacks will say, oh, this guy's a quarterback. No, this guy's a football player. He can make plays with his legs. He can make plays with his arms. And this guy is a competitor. He's a guy that's going to go out there and lay it out on the line for his teammates. And one thing, I don't know if you guys noticed that at the game, but I noticed it. And I think someone may have pointed out, the first person that went to, or actually, I think second person, once EQ got on the sidelines after that drop pass, was Justin Fields. Mm-hmm. He went back to EQ, tapped him, said, hey, don't worry about it. And that's leadership. That's a guy saying, all right, I'm gonna come back to you again. You made plays for me before. Don't worry about it. Right. And just that's just showing, his ability now to kind of take over, be a leader. And that's why something that Tyler and I talked in a post-game show saying, hey, this guy is now becoming the face of the franchise. He's comfortable. He knows he's getting there, right? He's not there fully, but he's getting there. And I think this is just more of him just developing here overall on and off the football field.
We saw Chase Claypool get put in the game, and he got some snaps, got a couple of catches there. just the way they use him, they try to get him on a bubble screen once, drop the ball, and then they obviously wanted him to get vertical. And he said numerous occasions while he was in Pittsburgh that he wants to run more go routes. So, how do you envision as he gets a little more acclimated with the offense? How do you see them using him? Is it just get the ball in his hand and let him make plays, or do you see them really sending him as the vertical guy because they already have Mooney, who they'd like that to be as well?
Right. No, I mean, eventually, once he gets settled into the offense, and we might see some more expansion of his play this week here versus Detroit. I think initially what you're going to do is what you saw on Sunday, right? You're going to do quick hitters, smoke screens, slip screens, get the ball in his hands, maybe on a jet sweep, hand the ball off to him, let him use some of that, that physique, that physicality after the run and make some plays. There was a play where he cut the ball short of the first down, broke a tackle and started, 12 yard up the football field for a first down. Plays like that, those short hitters. And then also, even if he's not the intended receiver on a play, hey, you line him up on the outside and let him run a grow route. He's going to take a defender with him, possibly even a safety, because of the size, the speed, the dimension that he brings to the football field, something the Bears did not have before. So, and I've said before, like if I see him one-on-one coverage on the outside, I don't care who's out there covering him. He's 6'4", 240 with a 40-inch vertical. I'm throwing a ball up there to him and just let him see if he make a play on the football. That's what I would do, and I think that's what they're doing in that play where they didn't call the pass interference. I think that's what they're trying to do is just get the ball down the field and have him go up there and make a play on a football. So that's what I would do. I think we're going to see more and more of his role expand, and I think once you see him getting some catches, you see some that secondary kind of coverage drifting towards his way. Now we're going to see guys like Mooney and St. Brown and even Pettis come clear and get more and more opportunities. We already saw Cole Kmet in the first game with Claypool out there and Mooney out there, all with kind of a full complement, if you will, of weapons. Kmet scored 2 touchdowns there too, and then that first touchdown that was one I was going to give to Aldo to kind of break down here as well. Terrific play design there by Getsy, where he's got Kmet. They've got the defense thinking Kmet's blocking, but he kind of just slips out in the back and comes right open. And now you have Fields coming out, rolling out wide open. Kmet, easy touchdown, pitch and catch. So I'm just loving what Getsy's doing so far. Give him more weapons and let him just try and scheme more of these guys open. I think the best is yet to come. Now, if we can just stop them from scoring 35 points, we could get some of these victories here, because like right now I was looking at the schedule, the Bears can compete with every single one of these players, every single one of these teams on their schedule. They can score points on them. It's just, can you stop them from scoring points on you?
And there's a schedule right there. They got Detroit this week at home. I love this spaceship graphic we have. It never gets old here. But they got Detroit at home, and they go to Atlanta and then to the Jets. And it's not like Green Bay's a world beater right now. And they got them at Soldier Field before it gets a little sticky with Philadelphia and Buffalo. But the next 4 games are fine.
Other than the Eagles and the Bills, there isn't a team I can just say right now, the Bears cannot beat this team, right?
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. They if they can score points like this. Now, here's the thing, and this is the same show that I saw earlier today. I believe it was on FS1, where they said that, you know what? Yeah, we're talking about how good Fields is, but they lost the game, and I'm thinking to myself, since when all we talk about is how wins should not be a quarterback stat. And I'm like, and what do you want him to do? Like, did you want him to score 50 points against the Cowboys? Did you want him to play linebacker against the Dolphins? So it crushes me, because he still won NFC Player of the Week, right? And on a losing team, which is really, you had a hell of a game if you were the NFC Player of the Week and you lost the game. So it kills me that there's still people that are clutching to, well, they lost, they got to start winning. It's an 22 person team that everyone has to do their part, and that's why, which leads me to the defense, which had me screaming my head off. I'm sure, Aldo, you were not very thrilled while you were at the game watching this defense get carved up.
This defense sucks.
You can play it as many times as you want. It'll never get old. That is always allowed on this show, even whenever it doesn't apply to the conversation. Just throw that damn soundbite in there anytime. It just makes my heart so warm. But Danny, it's my opinion, and tell me, because listen, I'm not a defensive coordinator, but when I see a 4-3 cover 2, pretty soft, just getting carved up like a Thanksgiving turkey, and you're not getting any push on the quarterback, my thought process is, you know what? If you're getting beat up anyway, or you're just giving up yards anyway, why not send some pressure? So even if you are getting beat up or they're carving up your defense, maybe one of those blitzers get through and you get a fumble, or maybe you get an errant throw and Eddie Jackson can go up and get an interception. Why not take some more chances? Because it's not like they're holding teams to 10, 12, 11, whatever points. They're still giving up a lot of points. Why not at least have that chance that you could make a game breaker kind of play on defense?
Right. And I'm with you. And I think I tweeted it out on Sunday. I'm like, all right, listen, Alan Williams, I know this defense is based off of your front four guys getting pressure, but guess what? Even with Robert Quinn, even with Roquan Smith, they weren't getting pressure consistently up front with your front four guys. All right, Tua's carving you up. I understand they got the two big play receivers out there, and you want to drop back and kind of cover. But if they got the quarterback got 7-8 seconds in the pocket, I don't care how good your defensive secondary is. And I think the Bears have a pretty damn good young defensive secondary developing here. I don't care how good they are. He's going to find holes in that zone, and that's what they're doing. They're dropping these 10, 12, 15-yard chunk plays here where Hill and Waddle and Gesicki were just kind of sitting in the middle and finding these holes, and he was just hitting them on time. So what you got to do, especially with a quarterback like Tua, who's an undersized quarterback, you got to just pressure him. Now, I'm not saying you got to bring a blitz on every single down, but you got to do something, right? You come up with that the two linebacker look and that A gap, that mug look, if you will, and maybe bring one of them, drop one of them back. Maybe I've seen Brisker come in on blitzes off the edge. You do that, play some stunts, play some games. You got to bring pressure. You're getting burned anyway. Just go ahead and bring pressure and kind of get Tua off his mark there. And what happened on that fourth down play? They brought pressure. I think they brought Brisker off the edge there, and Tua kind of hurt his throw, incomplete pass, fourth down. The Bears get the ball back, the chance to go and win the football game. You got to do that, especially for a quarterback like Tua. If he sits back in the pocket and just has time to throw, he's going to carve you up with his accuracy and all that stuff. So you bring pressure, especially in this phase on these undersized quarterbacks, and they're going to hurry up their process. They're going to move their feet, shovel their feet. Next thing you know, it's an errant throw. You might have an interception, and now you're going the other way for either a touchdown or at least at the very worst, you give your offense back the football, and they can't be stopped, and now they can go back and try and score.
Interesting question here from Rock Davis. Says, do you think the head coach is telling Williams not to blitz and play soft? How much impact do you think Eberflus has on Alan Williams or the game plan? Because it's been my thought, and I could be wrong, that Eberflus kind of lets his coordinators coordinate the game and he doesn't have too much control. Do you think that he has anything to do with this? Or do you think he needs to take control of this and say, hey, this ain't working, start sending some people in? Because I think it's more of the latter, where he needs to step in and say, listen, this is too vanilla. We got to change it.
Right. So Eberflus and Williams and the defensive staff put together the game plan during the week. And then I think Eberflus leaves Alan Williams to call the plays, right? But being the head coach, he can always come and say, listen, blitz here. Even if Williams doesn't want to blitz, what the head coach calls for a blitz, guess what? The defensive coordinator is going to call a blitz. So Eberflus can always, override the defensive call by Williams. But I think he lets Williams do the play calling and run that defense. And if he needs to chime in, I think he chimes in.
I got to say that this week against the Detroit Lions, a lot of people are talking about, well, what happens if Justin Fields comes back down to earth and has an average or below average game against the Detroit Lions? I'm really not too concerned about that. I do think that the Bears are going to reach their average or close to their average of 30 points per game that they've achieved over the last 3 games. What I'm more concerned about now is the defense's play against the Detroit Lions. And there's been a lot of disruption to this defense. 2 of the team leaders were traded in the last 2 weeks, Robert Quinn and then Roquan Smith. I can sense and I can empathize with the fact that this team, their soul has been sort of ripped out by losing 2 team leaders and 2 guys who were productive in their own ways, but not necessarily maybe being all pro. Robert Quinn certainly wasn't putting up the 18.5 sacks. But it definitely affected the mindset of these defensive players. So now, though, is the time that they got to get it together. They should be galvanized by this Miami Dolphins game in 2 ways. One, what the offense did to propel this team into national prominence, and 2, their own awful performance against the Dolphins, and say to themselves, look at themselves in the mirror and say, we can be better than this. Jack Sanborn will play better. All of these replacement players who are filling in for Quinn now and Smith should be playing better. And Jalen Johnson shouldn't be burned like he was. So this is a critical game for the defense against this Detroit Lions team that had a great start offensively to the season, but has been playing more to what expectations were and not playing great offensive football in the last 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, and we kind of are just burying the fact that the Bears gave up a punt block for a touchdown, which I don't know if it's just because we assumed the Dolphins were going to score anyway if the Bears punt the ball, but like that's lost in this whole thing that they gave up a bad special teams turnover touchdown, which ultimately played a big role in this game because if you punt it and then get you force a punt on the other end, maybe the score is not what it turned out to be, but also that shows the margin for error with this team. You cannot give up those kind of plays because the defense is going to give up a lot of points, which Danny, I know you've been harping for the Bears to use their first overall pick on a 3 technique. Is this just kind of solidifying your opinion?
Yeah, first all pick 3 technique or defensive end or attack it from both free agency and the draft. I mean, right now, like I'm looking at the free agent list, and unless they franchise tag him, but Daron Payne from Washington looks really nice in that middle of that defense. Even a guy like Sheldon Rankins that's playing with the Jets will look really nice in that middle of that defensive line for the Bears. So there's just a couple of guys that free agents I know off the top of my head, and again you're gonna have to attack this from multiple fronts. And I think defense now takes top priority. Obviously, you still want to get a receiver, a weapon for Justin Fields. You still want to get some more offensive linemen, but I think defense has got to be the top priority. And again, in terms of the question you posed, although people are worried about if Justin Fields has a so-so game, you know what? It's going to happen. He's going to have a so-so game, but this is why you go rely on your running a game, your rushing attack. You have a 2-headed monster in Montgomery and Herbert. And that's the one thing I'm afraid that I don't want to happen is that the Bears see all the success now, Getsy and everybody else in terms of what Justin is doing, and they totally forget about Herbert and Montgomery. I think Montgomery only had 15 carries. He had 14 carries. Herbert had 7 carries last week. So now a lot of times they were trailing, but they were never down by 20 or 30 points. I mean, they were mostly 11 or something like that, two score leads there for Miami. And then Justin was just doing his thing on the field. And I think they just kind of went with it. But, don't forget about that rushing attack. You are a running team. Everything you build offensively is based off of that a run game and the play action. Just don't forget about that. Rely on that. Defensively, you're going to have to stop the run against Detroit. They got, Swift is going to be, DeAndre Swift's going to be back this week, I believe. Jamal Williams is a beast in between the tackles. And so, defensively, I know Miami only had 77 yards of rushing, but they only had 23 carries. So I don't think they really gave you an effort in terms of really sticking to the run game. But if Detroit comes in here hell-bent on running the football, the Bears are going to have to do something in terms of, shoring up that run defense and making sure, they can at least, secure the run and then worry about, in terms of what Detroit can do passing the football. So we'll see how that goes there as well.
And just very quickly regarding the identity of this team is that it's a running team. The identity for the offense is that it's a running team. And one of the things that makes that even more intriguing is with the addition of Chase Claypool, that gives them another huge wide receiver who is very adept at blocking. You put him with N'Keal Harris, Equanimeous St. Brown. You got Cole Kmet, one of the better blocking tight ends in pro football. You've got outstanding downfield blockers for this offensive team, and that adds to this identity. And those guys can become better, more proficient at catching passes, and so that gives some nuance to this running team that these big blocking wide receivers can also burn you, and it doesn't have to be with separation. It's just because they've got long catch radiuses, and that's just going to help further the identity of this team. To me, it's pretty exciting.
I touched on earlier, that first touch on the Kmet. Kmet came off looking like he was blocking. He's actually blocking a guy, and next thing you know, he releases and he goes out to the field, into the flat. Here comes Fields out, and so it's like they're building their passing attack off of the rushing game. That's what I'm talking about.
Cool.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to hit on before we start talking about score predictions was Danny. You've always been the voice of reason with Cole Kmet, and I like to listen to that voice because his aspiration was to be Kyle Rudolph, not Travis Kelce. So before people start thinking like, oh my God, we got this big vertical guy that's going to set the world on fire, please, and I'm saying this in the most endearing way, please be the wet blanket here and let us know what Cole Kmet was actually doing.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's like, and that's one. I don't know. That's what I said when he came out of Notre Dame. I said this guy's more Kyle Rudolph than he is Travis Kelce or Rob Gronkowski. That was my comp for him. And what that's not a bad thing, right?
No.
Kyle Rudolph is a nice big target in the red zone. And I think what Cole Kmet has done now is he's a guy that can build off of this, right? In terms of his inline blocking. Now they're flanking him out a little bit more in terms of the slot. He's not a guy that's going to really threaten that seam, if you will. He's a guy that after the catch is phenomenal. He's always takes 2 or 3 defenders to bring him down. So again, just do what you're doing now with him. Kind of sneak him onto the flats. Scheme him open like you're doing, and let Justin get these easy, nice throws to him. 5-10 yards, and let him do the rest of it. So, and again, in the red zone. Now I don't know if that was this past week. Obviously, the 2 touchdowns is a career game for him. I just want to know if, and I have to go back and kind of look at the tape again and just kind of hone in on him. Is the presence of Claypool what kind of allowed him to get open there, or was it just the natural maturation of him in this offense and Getsy now getting more and more creative in terms of how he use him? I love the fact they gave him that jet sweep on a tight end jet sweep. He got about 6-7 yards, and then he came back down. Now this is where I've seen KC use Kelce, where Kelce is under center, grabs the ball and snaps it, and he gets rushes for a 1 yard for a first down. So I like the creativity. And again, with Claypool not being out of there for a full week and a half, what's Getsy going to do in terms of getting him more involved in the offense? So, going back to Kmet, though, your original question, John, he's an inline blocking tight end, is developing into one of the better inline blocking tight ends, and that's just fine because you're going to need those guys. And you may need to go get yourself a split, tight end or a joker, they like to call him. Maybe a guy like a Mike Gesicki is a free agent.
He's just going to say he's a free agent. Let's go get him.
That's a perfect complement to a Cole Kmet. You're going to have 2-3 tight end formations, right? Might as well get a weapon there like a Gesicki or someone to that ilk. And in terms of the guy can kind of get in the middle of the football field, stretch those seams, give you another weapon now in the middle of the field to go along with Kmet, not replacing him.
Yeah, that direct snap where he got the first down, I was like, what is this? This is a new wrinkle. But you know what? He's 6'6", about 5,000 pounds. So why not just get the ball and fall forward? So I had no problem with that. So, guys, before we start wrapping things up here, let's talk about some predictions for the game. You don't have to give me a score if you don't want to, but how do you see this one shaking out? I'll go first, I'll give you some time to think about it. I think this is going to be a very interesting game as far as I don't know if it's going to be up in the 30s, but I can certainly see a lot of points being scored in this one. I don't know what the over-under is either. I didn't do any research on the betting part of this game. I don't know what the spread is. I don't know what the over-under is, but I would take the over if I were a betting man. So I can see this being sloppy at times. I can see a few turnovers potentially coming up. So I think the Bears are going to score enough. I think Justin Fields is dynamic enough. And I think maybe if the Bears do change something up on defense, they can rattle Jared Goff, because like we were talking about with Kent Platte, he said Goff has to have everything perfect around him for him to operate efficiently. So why not throw a bunch of crazy crap at him and see if you can rattle him early and get him to start turning into an interception machine? So I'm gonna go Bears 29 and Lions 23. I just think that they're gonna score enough points and probably make some kind of stop on the defensive side of the ball, and the Bears get a win. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, for me too. I mean, Jared Goff, it's not a secret. He hates Soldier Field. He doesn't like playing in the outdoors and the elements. Now, I think the forecast for Sunday is going to be in the 30s. I'm not sure if it's going to be sunny or not, so it might be a little bit windy. So it might be a little bit too cold for Mr. Jared Goff, a California boy there. So we'll see how that goes. But again, it goes back to that defense. If the Bears cannot get any sort of pressure, whether it's front four or design blitzes or any sort of scheme anything up, I think he's going to get sit back, and he's got weapons, right? He's got Armon St. Brown out there. We talked about the running backs in terms of DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams in the backfield. So we'll see how it goes. But I mean, I think the Bears going to continue, hopefully, putting the points up on the board. I'll say, and again, I think I want to see the running attack being more of a focal point in the offense, going kind of back to that, not just relying on Justin here to throw the ball on the football field. So, but for a final score, I'm thinking like Bears 28, Lions 24.
All right, what do you got?
Well, I'm not going to make a prediction, but I will say this, that every time the Lions lose a game, Don Burr is nowhere to be found in our chat room space. And then the bigger the loss, the longer the absence for Don Burr. So my hope is that the Bears are going to clobber the Lions so badly that Don Burr will be missing for weeks and weeks. But before
they won last week. Did he make an appearance in the shows?
He was actually missing, so I imagine that he probably got beat up by a Green Bay Packers fan, a female Green Bay Packers fan.
Hey man, I love it because all it does is keep stirring up conversation in the chat, and it keeps.
I love Don.
Keep coming on, Don. You're a good sport. I like you.
Don is a good guy, deep down inside, but I still hate him. Before we let Danny go, though, there is one more piece of tape that I would like for him to evaluate. So I apologize, Danny, that I didn't get this to you earlier, but this is the John Buffone booty bubble shake here. So
I saw that. I'm like, is he trying to push a fart out? I mean, what's
I had to get loose, Dan. I'm old, Dan. I had to
is he doing the Jalen Waddle thing before
Listen, my hips are a mess. I got to get loose before I do anything that involves movement there. And how did I do? Oh, did I score it? And my tags out on my shirt. Oh, what? I'm a freaking mess. And my pants falling down.
Is this the strike?
Let's take a look here and see. No, he leaves a pin.
No, I didn't. Did I?
There's a pin there. Yeah.
I don't know about all that.
That was fun, guys. That was a good time.
Danny, when they say, a guy has, open, loose hips, that's what they're talking about, right? Like I'm shifty. Like if I was backpedaling,
or what Shakira says, hips don't lie.
My hips did not lie, and my final score ultimately did. It was not very good, but thank you for that great analysis, and thank you for capturing that moment for me, Aldo. That's great. Thank you.
I had to share it with the world.
I've been on trips with Aldo, and with Aldo has a camera, you're never safe.
That's
Never.
Right.
Get back into your evaluation, Aldo. What's going on? What's going on with the game that we're talking about on this football podcast?
Well, I just want to let people know that we've got more great football content coming up tomorrow. We got baseball first. Crosstown Crosstalk. Vinny Parisi is going to talk about the World Series. Look at Dusty Baker's incredible career. He's headed to the Hall of Fame, and we learned today that he's going to sign another one-year contract to manage the Houston Astros, and that's should be a perfect encore for Dusty. He's very well loved in baseball. So Vinny is going to cover Dusty's career with in Major League Baseball in that World Series win. And then at 6 p.m. it's the Mac and Reed show. Ross Reed and Evan McLean are going to also. I've got some video to embarrass them, John, so don't feel too bad. But they're also going to look at the progress of Justin Fields and talk about this upcoming game, and then of course our regular full slate of shows on Sunday.
Absolutely, and listen, like you said, check out the Mac and Reed show on Thursday. I just feel like that's a really great show. They're going to have some interesting takes. I think that just if you haven't listened to it or watched it yet, tune in and see what those guys have to say. And then don't forget, directly after the Bears game, which hopefully is a win over the Lions, that Danny, myself, and Tyler Ellis will give you our immediate thoughts on the Bears' performance on the Barroom's postgame show, Bear Football. The second the clock hits 000, we go live and we start talking about the Bears game. Hopefully, we're going to be juiced up no matter what, but hopefully we're talking about a Bears win and we're talking about what they did to dominate the division foe, the Detroit Lions. Aldo, what else do we got going on? I know we got some non-football stuff coming up here, right?
We do indeed. Our science fiction show looks at all of the science fiction movies coming up. I'm not sure what they're going to tackle, so to speak, this Thursday night, but I love their show. They do a lot of work on Marvel movies, but they include the whole slate of what Hollywood is releasing from a science fiction perspective, that genre of movies. And then if you're a gambler, make sure you tune into Weekend Sports Betting Tips with Johnny Santucci. Johnny's on a roll, man. He has not had a losing day in about over a week now. So Tucci is a great follow, and his Weekend Sports Betting Tips with his two co-hosts is here on Saturdays. You'll have to subscribe to the Barroom Network because sometimes their start time varies a little bit to accommodate their schedules. So the best way to stay on top of everything that we're doing here at the Barroom Network is to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then the audio podcasts are available wherever you get your audio podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, you name it. You will find us there under the banner Barroom Network.
All right, Danny, final thoughts before we head out.
No, I mean, I'm just looking forward to again watching this game on Sunday. Hopefully, like this is a big stretch for the Bears. I mean, like I know their expectations are low for them in terms of what we wins and losses, but these 3 games that are coming up, at least the next 2. I mean, the Jets have a pretty damn good defense, but offensively, I think the Bears hopefully they could compete with them. But versus Detroit and versus Atlanta, these are not 2 teams that are juggernauts, and you can easily, I think, if they continue this progress on offense, beat them. They just got to get some semblance of a defense and get a couple of stops. The one thing I will say on defense, like I said, I already talked about our secondary. I love our secondary. Guys, I think Eddie Jackson's having himself another Pro Bowl season. I know, although he's been a little thorn in your side in terms of some of the tackling, but he's coming up aggressive. He's hitting players now. Obviously, he's I think he's tied, or if he's not tied, he's second in the league with 4 interceptions. So I think he's having a bounce back season, and I'm glad to see them happen here with the Bears, and hopefully that he's got now solidified his spot on this roster going for the in the future.
All right, that will do it for this edition of Buffone 55. Danny, thank you so much for coming on. Always love your insight. Always love you breaking down the film for us. And it was awesome seeing you guys this past weekend. It was great seeing the Barflies in person this weekend. Just once again, Aldo, can't thank you enough for basically putting all that together. Like I said, you brought together a bunch of people who otherwise in life may not have ever crossed paths. So that's, if nothing else that you take from that, know that you brought a good community together to have some fun and talk about our favorite thing, the Chicago Bears. So cannot thank you enough. But incredible weekend in Chicago, and hopefully there's another incredible game on Sunday when the Bears defeat the Lions. But for Danny Shimon and Aldo Gandia, I'm John Buffone. This has been Buffone 55. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.